Basically, if people make you believe you're divided, don't accept that. You're not divided. You wouldn't be sitting here if you were divided. It's the politics in Washington, the business of the Democrat and Republican Party that has a better model. Their business model is better if you're divided, and basically they get you all chained up and you're ready to go, and nothing gets done. So their business model is better to be divided than united. And we're going to change that.
That was America's self-described unifier, Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, at a town hall in New Hampshire sponsored by No Labels, an organization that is trying to sell itself as nonpartisan. Though there are big, huge, gaping questions about who is backing the group, since they refuse to disclose their donors, and huge holes in their argument that running a third-party ticket wouldn't just elect Donald Trump. So maybe unity and an end to all division sounds great on paper. I mean, more options, tone down the partisanship. Can't we all just get along? It sounds good. But as Jamelle Bouie argues in the New York Times, this whole notion is a bit of a fantasy. He writes, quote, "There's no way to realize this long-running fantasy of politics without partisanship. Organized conflict is an unavoidable part of democratically structured political life for the simple reason that politics is about governing and governing is about choices." And Jamelle Bouie, opinion columnist for the New York Times, joins me now. Now, you started your column with this line that really stuck with me. For as long as Americans have had partisan political competition, they have hated partisanship itself. Or I'm going to add or so they say. But you make the case for the effectiveness of partisanship. So let's hear it. What's the case?
Sure. It's not so much that partisanship is effective or ineffective. It's just part of life. It's an unavoidable part of political life, like I wrote. And so the question really isn't, can we have politics without partisanship? I think the clear answer is no. Even during times when partisanship is relatively low, there is still intense partisan competition. It comes with the package. The question is, does our political system work with the partisanship we have? Does it facilitate it? Does it structure it in a useful way? Or does our political system make it difficult to operate under conditions of high levels of partisanship? Now, I would say that the issue is the latter, in that if you want a better politics, you actually just need to change the system in which we're working.
Now, so one of the arguments of changing the system are these candidates who are running potentially for No Labels or in a third party. And national polling has captured the appetite for a third party or unity ticket for decades. I mean, back in 2016, it was 46% said we needed a third party. A poll last week said 47%. It's been around for a while. But in actual elections with a third party or unity candidate, it typically turns into single digit support. Maybe that validates what you're saying in your column, but why do you think that is?
I think it's because typically these third-party candidacies aren't really challenging or changing the system at all. First of all, it's not clear that voters want some sort of like amorphous unity ticket. When voters talk about wanting a third option, they often mean they want something distinct. And the thing about a unity ticket is, by definition, it isn't distinct. But the other thing is that there's no real way to win, given the Electoral College, given the fact that you need to kind of structure elections over the entire country, especially for presidential election. There's no real way for a third party to win. And really the only time a third party has actually won or come close to winning in American history is when the other parties collapse, right? The Republican Party emerges out of the collapse of the Whig Party. And so it's like the system briefly becomes no longer a two-party system and then becomes a two-party system again. And so you have to actually change kind of the underlying rules of the game to even make a third party viable in any kind of election. And then the third parties that are likely going to emerge are going to stand for something specific. They're not just going to be a kumbaya party of all sides coming together.
You make this point also in your column that there's a tendency for those who are advocating for a unity ticket or unifying to kind of lump very different things together. And this really stuck out to me, too, like Black Lives Matter and the January 6th riot. Not that they're saying it exactly like that, but they are lumping them together, which clearly feels dangerous. Why do you think that that is part of the argument? Or do you think that they don't think of it that way?
I mean, my sense is that they think of it as they're positing the two extremes. And Senator Manchin, during the town hall, this is the terms in which he talks about it, that there are these two extreme sides. And I mean, those extremes aren't equivalent at all. But I think that's how the people making the argument imagine it. And I guess what I would say is that, again, there's actually nothing really wrong with people having extreme views. There's nothing necessarily wrong with people having views that are outside of the mainstream. The question is, like, to what extent do we want those views to be represented in our politics? And if we want them represented at all, and I think it's an open question, some people do, some people don't, then you have to actually look at the structure of how you create political competition in the country. Right now, because of our single member districts, because of our first past the post elections, everything's set up to create two dominant parties, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's really, I think, for people who want another option, that's how they should be thinking. Not, can we create a third-party presidential campaign, but what are the rules of the game and how do you change them to facilitate competition?